I'll tell you the truth. Remember the day Karen snapped a photo of my little propane grill and waved it in my face like a crime scene? Something in me went quiet and hard. She hugged that HOA binder like a shield, page corners sticking out like claws. Too close to the house, she said, chin high, sunglasses flashing my porch and the flag above it. Per Section 7, Sub B, this is a warning. It wasn't just the grill. It was the way she said house. Like mine was a problem she'd been waiting to solve. I'd set that grill where my dad always set his. Just outside the back door, where the wind breaks under the eaves and the hickory smell wanders into the kitchen. Dad couldn't cook worth a dime, but he could turn a burger into a summer night that felt like church. First time he let me flip, I burned it to charcoal. He ate it anyway. Pride tastes better than perfect, he said. I can still hear the scrape of his tongs if I close my eyes. Karen stood on my stepping stones like she owned the mineral rights. The cul-de-sac looked like a brochure-trimmed hedges, regulation flags, a sprinkler ticking like a stubborn clock. She'd brought backup. 2 board members in polos and apologetic smiles. One held a tripod tape like he'd been promised snacks. It's within 5 feet of a combustible wall, she said, reading Miranda rights to a stake. Fire risk. Immediate correction required. I looked past her at the little grill I'd cleaned the night before, great black and shining with seasoning. Dad's flag hung steady from the porch. What stung wasn't the warning, it was the smallness of it, the pettiness, the way her voice climbed when she felt powerful. I pictured Dad's scarred hands setting the grill after mowing, saying, right where your mother can smell it. A quiet, hard place inside me settled like a foundation stone. I'll move it, I said, calm and neighborly. I even smiled. She blinked, then looked triumphant. Good, we'll re-inspect in 48 hours. She snapped another picture and turned. The polos followed. One shrugged a little. You know how she is. That night I sat on the porch. Coffee went cold. The maple my grandfather planted threw a long shadow. The house settled. Crickets started up. I thought about distance, the inches between neighbor and nuisance. The space a person needs to breathe without a rulebook in his face. I thought about Dad. Meet foolishness with grace, he'd say. But don't let it live rent-free in your yard. So I made a decision. I wouldn't argue with Karen. Not on the sidewalk, not on Facebook, not at meetings where everyone plays nice until the cookies run out. I'd give her exactly what she demanded, a grill not close to my house. So far, in fact, it would have wheels, a license plate, every line the fire marshal loves to read. Next morning, I drove to a farm auction off County Road 12, diesel and kettle corn in the air. Men in ball caps lifting rusty treasures and calling them antiques, and there it was. Like a ship pulled onto dry land, a trailer-mounted hog roaster serious steel, wide chimney, a firebox big enough to eat a quart of oak, black paint, white wall tires, a hitch that gleamed like a promise. She's fed a whole church twice and outlasted 2 pastors, the farmer said. I walked around it slow, laid my hand on the side, and felt its cool weight. This wasn't a grill. It was a statement, the auctioneer rattled. Hands went up. I held mine until it hurt. Gavel fell. The farmer shook my hand. She'll bring a crowd, he said. I pictured Karen's sunglasses reflecting a stainless chimney tall as a hymn. I pictured neighbors wandering over with paper plates and weak excuses. Laughter, music, old stories shaking loose. I hadn't just bought a roaster. I'd bought our street a reason to act like a street again. I hauled that beast home slow and steady. Flags flapping on county buildings. In the cul-de-sac, I backed the trailer onto my pad beside the driveway, near the siding. Nowhere near anything but open sky. It settled onto wheel chocks, like it had always meant to live there. Sunlight slid over the lid. It looked like a black piano tuned for summer. Karen's blinds twitched. Of course they did. She came out fast, binder under her arm, mouth forming no. Morning, I said. Want to help me read the rules? I had them printed and highlighted: state fire code, HOA restrictions, county permits, distance from structures. Met, fuel storage, compliant. Trailer on private drive, allowed. Temporary private gathering, encouraged if clear of obstructions. I'd called the fire marshal on the way home. He chuckled and emailed a checklist. Every box ticked, every line initialed. Karen flipped pages, mouth pinched thin. What exactly are you planning? She asked, sensing the thing she hates most. Neighbors about to smile without her permission. Just moving the grill, I said. Like you asked. Inside, something loosened Dad's kind eyes 10 minutes past the trouble. Pride cooks just fine at 225 with apple wood smoke curling toward heaven. I didn't want revenge. I wanted community. Kids biking in circles and forgetting to squabble. Older couples saying, "Do you remember when?" and finishing the sentence. A street that didn't need a binder to behave. 48 hours, Karen snapped. We'll reinspect. She hurried off before my smile could make her any madder. See you then, I said it and meant it. That evening, I set a folding chair by the roaster and oiled the hinges. The metal took it like skin takes sun. Somewhere, a basketball thumped. The roaster waited, patient as a good dog. A breeze lifted the porch flag. I remembered Dad wetting a finger to test wind, then standing where the smoke never found his eyes. Some lessons you learn by standing still, letting petty trouble blow past while you build something bigger than the complaint. 2 days. That's all I needed, 2 days to turn a warning into an invitation. If Karen wanted to measure distance, I'd give her one to measure from loneliness to laughter, from suspicion to honest smoke. From 5 feet to a whole street, all I had to do was light the first coal. The reinspection morning dawned clean and bright. The kind of Saturday that makes you want to mow, even if the grass doesn't need it. I was up before the robins, running the fire marshal checklist like a pilot. Fuel locked in the metal box. Extinguisher charged and mounted. Clearances marked with a chalked rectangle and nitrogen monoxide. Parking stenciled crisp. A stack of apple and oak under tarp, folded tidy as shirts dot at 9. Karen arrived with fresh entourage and a laser measurer she held like a wand. We'll proceed in an orderly fashion, she said, as if a parade had formed. I stepped aside. The laser blinked, sighting, trailer tongue, curb. She read the rule book under her breath. The numbers were what they were. More than 10 feet from the wall, more than 5 from combustibles, driveway clear, sidewalk passable. Compliance is noted, she said, disappointed that compliance existed. However, we've received neighbor concerns regarding odors. I almost laughed. The roaster was cold. The only odor was clean steel and cooling coffee. Before I could answer, Mr. Castle from 2 doors down shuffled over the cap. The cane the posture of a man done asking permission. Ma'am, he said, giving her a nod that used to mean something. If you're taking votes on smells, I vote for ribs. He winked at me. Karen stiffened. It's not a vote, she said. It's a process. She turned to me. Large gatherings require approval. I'm planning a small one, I said. Friends and neighbors. No sidewalk tables, no amps. Quiet hours honored. We'll clean up. That work? She opened her mouth, then closed it. The new board member Tom cleared his throat. It meets the guidelines, he said. Hydrangea wilting look from Karen. But rules are rules when someone else follows them better than you wield them. They retreated, binder like a shield. Blinds lifted around the cul-de-sac. Faces flickered. Curiosity travels faster than email. I printed 6 plain invitations and walked the loop. Neighbors and friends. Smoked pork and sides at my place. Today, 5 to 8 p.m., bring a chair. Bring a story. No RSVP. Give folks a porch and a reason they'll come. Back home, I set the fire. Charcoal in the basket, oak stacked like Lincoln logs, fence barely whispering. I struck a match and held it a second longer than needed, feeling its heat. Blue smoke took the sky. 2 pork shoulders, 10 pounds, each hit the grate. Rubbed last night with brown sugar, salt, pepper, paprika, and stubborn hope. Lid down. The roaster hummed that low, holy note only good steel knows. By noon, the street had changed. Windows down. Slower driving. Unplanned smiles. Kids loitered on bikes like they'd forgotten how to go straight home. Mr. Castle set a lawn chair by my mailbox and nodded at strangers who weren't strangers anymore. Tom wandered over. No polo today, just a faded fishing cap. Looks professional, he said. I handed him a spare probe. Keep me honest at 225. Yes, sir, he grinned. At 2, a county pickup rolled up. Out climbed the fire marshal, big mustache, tired eyes that had seen worse than a Saturday pit. Heard there's a new rig on the block, he said. Figured I'd say hi before anybody dials 911 over barbecue. He checked my setup: extinguishers, clearances, vent direction, fuel. Textbook. He nodded. Mind if I grab a plate later? I'll be offended if you don't. He left his cell number for peace of mind, which passes for a blessing these days. By 4, a folding table appeared with slaw, beans, deviled eggs, and a pie that could end an argument. I added a pan of chicken for the no-pork crowd because hospitality isn't zero-sum. At 4:30 I cracked the lid. The street went quiet like fireworks. Smoke curled like a story you could smell. The shoulders were mahogany and patient. Temps were perfect. Half an hour more, I said. Time obeyed. 5 o'clock brought plate clacks and foil rustles. I pulled the pork, steam hitting my face, hands flying in black gloves, while Tom stood ready with a tray, grinning like a kid on opening day. A drizzle of vinegar sauce. A toss until it shone. Piled high. Someone clapped. Kids first. Then parents. Then Mr. Castle, who doesn't stand on ceremony because life taught him better. Across the street, Karen stood with arms crossed. Linda from 3 houses down joined her and talked soft, gesturing at the roaster, the line, the small bursts of laughter. Karen's mouth made a thin line. Linda kept at it. Finally, Karen shook her head, then nodded once, like signing a treaty with herself. They crossed together, voices dimmed. I set down the tongs and wiped my hands. We brought plates. Linda said kindness disguised as logistics. Karen stood beside her. No binder, sunglasses in hand. Her eyes looked ordinary, tired. You're within code, she said. I figured you'd check, I answered. Gentle. Hungry? A beat. Then, very quietly, yes. I handed her a plate like I would anyone. Sauce on the side. Pickles at the end. Watched the step by the roaster. She took it. Something important loosened. Months of letters and warnings untied in one small exchange. I didn't need an apology. I just needed her to stand where we were standing, on the warm side of ordinary. Dusk fell like a kind decision. Fireflies stitched the hedges. The flag breathed. People ate and talked in the rhythm food makes the back and forth that says you matter without saying it. The fire marshal came back for seconds and told a Cutresque story that ended with a possum. Laughter rose like heat. Even Karen laughed once short and surprised, and then the moment I'd hoped for. Mr. Castle told a story he hadn't told in years. A cookout on a base overseas, a borrowed grill, a sudden storm, a nurse who danced in the rain. His voice shook and steadied. A whole street leaned in. You could feel us change shape to fit him. All of this had been about distance, on paper, feet, inches, setbacks. Real life uses different units, inches between shoulders. The space a story needs to breathe, the gap between a warning and an invitation. Karen finished her plate, brought it back with both hands like a truce. Thank you, she said. You're welcome, I said and meant it. Monday, an email from the HOA hit my inbox. Subject: clarification on outdoor cooking appliances. That used to set my teeth on edge. This time, I poured coffee, sat on the porch, and opened it with a steady heart. The board Tom's fingerprints all over it acknowledged the difference between open flame hazards and enclosed. Code-compliant cookers. Reaffirmed safety standards. Encourage neighbors to be considerate and give a heads up if smoke might drift. It read less like a threat and more like common sense in grown-up clothes. I replied with a thank you and attached the fire marshal checklist for the neighborhood file. Then I watched the street wake up. Joan's kids hustled into the minivan, still talking about the best chicken ever. Mr. Castle's porch light clicked off. A jogger waved. The roaster sat on its pad, covered and patient. It had done its work. Maybe I had to. Around noon, a knock. Karen stood on my steps. No armor, no binder. Just Karen, hands folded, voice without edges. Do you have a minute? We sat on the porch, chairs angled toward the maple. The wind chime clinked. I'm good at rules, she said. They make sense. They keep things from falling apart, she swallowed. I'm not as good at people. I thought about how often I'd read motive into memos. About my own temper, steady as a pilot light. About Dad, who would have handed her a plate before she ever asked. Most of us are better at one than the other, I said. The trick is not using the thing you're good at to hide from the thing you're not. She blinked, surprised. Then nodded. I was wrong about the grill, she said. I'm sorry for how I handled it. Hammer tapped down the block to quick hits, the sound of a life being maintained. Thank you, I said. Apologies are like ribs, you don't overwork them. She smiled, small and real, and stood. We're planning a fall festival. If you're willing, we could use your roaster. Use it. I said, Karen, I'll pull it. She laughed, and it changed her face. The festival came together messy and beautiful permits, trash pickup, signs painted by 8 different hands. On the day, I backed the roaster to the center and chalked the lines again. Kids drew hopscotch in the leftover squares. The fire marshal swung by, shook his head like a man quietly proud of strangers, and left us to it. I cooked pork and chicken in a big pan of smoked McCann cheese, because a neighbor swore it cured pessimism. Karen ran the raffle table and kept losing track of the cash box, because she was busy talking to people she'd only ever emailed. Tom floated, fixing things before they broke. Mr. Castle brought a photo of the nurse in the rain, laughing like she'd invented joy. He set it by the dessert table and told the story when asked. Turns out, a lot of people asked. Late afternoon turned the maple leaves to stained glass. A sheriff's cruiser rolled by slow. The deputy leaned out. Smells legal, he said, and the street cheered like he'd announced a holiday. I handed him a sandwich for the road. Not everything went perfect. A gust sent napkins skittering, and we chased them, laughing. A kid knocked over lemonade and cried until another kid started splashing in it. The speaker died and came back with something from the 80s, and 3 dads humiliated themselves with air guitars. But in the middle of that ordinary chaos, something steady took root. We remembered we lived near each other on purpose. As dusk settled, I slid a skillet of peaches into the roaster butter and brown sugar sizzling to memory. When I lifted it out, the street went quiet again. I spooned the fruit over melting ice cream and passed bowls down the line, hands touching hands. Thank yous overlapping like leaves. Karen carried a tray of empties her 12th trip. I always thought leadership meant stopping bad things, she said. I forgot it can mean helping good things happen. She looked at the roaster, the chalk lines, the neighbors exhaling in lawn chairs. Thank you for reminding me. It wasn't just me, I said, nodding toward Mr. Castle, the hopscotch kids, and Tom waving off a compliment. It takes a whole street to choose the better version of itself. We cleaned up in that unspoken rhythm of people who've eaten together and owe each other small kindnesses. When the last bag was tied and the roaster cooled to a friendly warmth, I stood in the cul-de-sac and looked up. The porch flag was a dark shape against the night. Crickets sang. A screen door clicked. Home sounds. I rolled the roaster back to its pad and set the chocks. Ran my hand along the lid, faint warmth like a heartbeat. I thought of Dad, of the burned burger he swallowed like a medal, of his voice. Son, there's a difference between winning and being right. Choose the one that lets you sleep. I slept that night like a man who fed his people. Some fights aren't about the rule, they're about being seen. Answer smallness with generosity, and you might find the line in the sand was just a place waiting for you to draw a circle. Have you ever faced an HOA like this? Share your story in the comments. I read every one. If you believe some fights are worth having and worth winning the right way, hit subscribe. And let's stand up together.